The buy now, pay later pitch sounds irresistible. Get what you want instantly. Pay in tiny bite-sized chunks. No credit checks required. It's being sold as safe credit dreaming for a generation locked out of traditional lending. But beneath this polished convenience lies a story most consumers never see. Financial watchdogs are quietly issuing warnings. Industry insiders are asking uncomfortable questions about what happens when those bite-sized payments start adding up. Is this a revolution in consumer finance or a predatory spiral disguised with friendly technology? The answer might shock you. Stick around and hit that subscribe button because we're about to pull back the curtain on an industry that's betting big on your impulse purchases. In 2024, 1 in 6 American adults used buy now, pay later services. That's 50 million people splitting their purchases into bite-sized payments, and the number keeps climbing. Retailers couldn't sign up fast enough. Costco, Apple, Amazon, companies that once prided themselves on simple checkout experiences suddenly rushed to add those 4 magical words to their payment options. The gold rush was on. For merchants, the math was simple. Customers with buy now, pay later options spent 20% more per order. Conversion rates jumped. The psychological barrier of a big price tag simply vanished when shoppers could pay in installments. But here's what customers didn't see. Every time they clicked pay in 4, the merchant paid a hefty fee. Companies like Klarna, Afterpay, and Affirm charge retailers anywhere from 2 to 8% per transaction. That's double what credit card companies typically charge. Klarna alone netted billions in 2023 from these fees. But by early 2025, something shifted. Credit losses started climbing, and the easy profits began looking shakier. The real money machine worked differently than most people realized. These buy now, pay later loans weren't just sitting on company books. They were bundled together and sold as asset-backed securities to investment funds, spreading the risk across the entire financial system. There was another advantage the companies exploited. Unlike credit cards, buy now, pay later services sidestepped most federal regulations. They avoided the Truth in Lending Act requirements and faced far less oversight than traditional lenders. But regulators were starting to pay attention. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and Federal Reserve began sharpening their scrutiny as consumer complaints mounted and default rates crept higher. Every transaction generated valuable data. Purchase habits, spending patterns, financial behavior, information that gave these companies unprecedented insight into millions of shoppers' lives. This data became another revenue stream, sold to advertisers and market researchers. The business model had a critical weakness, though. Success depended on customers making repeat purchases and paying those crushing late fees when they inevitably missed payments. But what happens when too many people can't pay? 0% interest sounds like magic in a world drowning in fees, but the moment you miss that first payment, the zero interest fairy tale dies. Companies like Klarna and Afterpay hit you with late fees as high as $10 per missed installment. According to global data, these penalties add up fast, but it gets worse. Most users don't realize they're juggling multiple BNPL loans at once. 3 different apps, 3 different payment schedules, 3 different fee structures, missed payments on overlapping loans, and your fees can triple overnight. That $50 dress suddenly costs $150 in penalties alone. The contracts themselves read like legal puzzles, designed to confuse. Unlike traditional credit cards, many BNPL providers skip clear APR disclosures entirely. Even financially savvy consumers struggle to decode the true cost of their purchases. Here's a regulatory loophole these companies exploit. Many states classify BNPL as a service, not lending. This means they dodge consumer protection laws that govern credit cards and personal loans. Without federal oversight, providers charge different fees across state lines. What costs $5 in California might cost $15 in Texas for the same missed payment. Survey data from Observed revealed 66% of users worry about the financial risks, yet they keep clicking buy now, pay later anyway. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau found the average American now holds 3 or more concurrent BNPL loans. Returns become nightmares when payments are missed. Merchants refuse refunds. BNPL companies deny responsibility. Customers get stuck in dispute purgatory between the retailer and the payment provider. Resolution time stretches for months while fees keeps accumulating. Rising defaults should spell trouble for these companies, but here's the twisted business model. They profit even more from struggling users through penalty fees and collections. Compare this to credit cards with regulated interest rates and clear disclosure requirements. BNPL's hidden fee structure makes payday loans look transparent. If the entire system seems rigged against everyday shoppers, there's a reason people keep falling for it. The checkout button glows bright blue. Impossible to miss. But right beneath it, almost like an afterthought, sits another option. Pay in 4 easy payments. One click and suddenly that $200 purchase feels like $50. This isn't an accident. Every pixel, every color, every word placement has been meticulously tested. Companies like Affirm and Klarna spent millions perfecting what behavioral scientists call choice architecture, the art of making certain decisions feel inevitable. The targeting starts before you even see those buttons. Algorithms analyze your browsing patterns, tracking how long you linger on expensive items. Spent 10 minutes looking at that designer handbag? Expect a flood of buy now, pay later ads across every platform you visit. Social media influencers make it worse. They casually mention splitting payments like it's financial wisdom instead of debt accumulation. I just broke my Coachella outfit into 4 payments. So smart. They chirp to millions of impressionable followers. The language itself is weaponized psychology. Enjoy now, hassle-free, break it up, no stress. The word debt never appears, neither does credit or loan. Scarcity tactics push the hardest when you're most vulnerable. Only 3 left in stock. Flashes on the screen while a countdown timer ticks away. Your rational mind knows it's manipulation, but your fingers are already clicking pay later. The approval process feels effortless by design. Basic automated checks, no deep credit analysis, instant gratification. Users mistake this convenience for financial safety. If it's this easy to get approved, how risky could it really be? Gen Z and millennials are the perfect targets. 93.3 million Americans used Buy Now, Pay Later in 2024. These generations grew up online, comfortable with digital transactions, trusting in algorithmic recommendations. But when psychological warfare meets financial products, who's really responsible for what happens next? The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau discovered something alarming. Buy Now, Pay Later users are far more likely to carry outstanding balances across every other type of credit product. Credit cards, payday loans, personal loans, the pattern was unmistakable. By 2024, the average heavy BNPL user was juggling 4 or more concurrent loans simultaneously. Sarah, a marketing coordinator from Denver, had 6 active BNPL accounts, 4 credit cards maxed out, 2 payday loans due next week. She wasn't alone. 29% of regular BNPL users were making monthly payments that far exceeded their stated budgets, according to Enterprise Apps Today. The delinquency numbers looked clean on paper. Most BNPL companies reported less than 2% default rates, but consumer advocates at the Richmond Fed warned this was smoke and mirrors. Most BNPL payments rarely showed up in credit reports until serious default occurred. The debt was invisible to traditional credit bureaus. Borrowers could stack loan after loan with no one tracking the cumulative damage. When the bills finally came due, the consequences were swift and fierce. Collection calls, wage garnishment, bank account overdrafts that triggered cascading fees. Mike, a warehouse worker from Phoenix, watched his rent payment bounce because 3 different BNPL companies hit his account the same day. His utilities were cut off 2 weeks later. Financial wellness apps tried integrating BNPL tracking features, but most users never bothered logging their micro debts. The accounts seemed too small to matter. Academic researchers began connecting the dots. Heavy BNPL usage correlated strongly with falling FICO scores and higher default risk across all debt categories. The invisible weight was crushing people slowly. While millions of consumers quietly drowned in scattered obligations, Cracks were starting to appear in the foundation of the lenders themselves. In the first quarter of 2025, Klarna dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves through Wall Street. Their credit losses had jumped dramatically. Wall Street investors who had been riding high on BNPL stock prices suddenly found themselves on edge. The golden child of fintech was bleeding money for customers who simply couldn't pay back what they owed. Affirm and Afterpay quickly followed suit, slashing their revenue projections as user defaults spiked across their platforms. The companies that had promised easy credit for everyone were now discovering that not everyone could actually afford to pay. Behind closed doors, asset-backed securities built from BNPL loans faced intense scrutiny from ratings agencies. These financial instruments packed with consumer debt were starting to look dangerously familiar. The parallels to the early mortgage-backed security tremors before the 2008 crisis were impossible to ignore. Once again, financial institutions had packed risky consumer debt into seemingly safe investments. Despite the warning signs, industry forecasts still projected the market would hit $167 billion by 2032. But even the most optimistic analysts admitted growth was expected to slow dramatically. Ratings agencies began downgrading BNPL lenders as charge-offs climbed higher than anyone had anticipated. The companies that had built their entire business model on infinite growth were suddenly facing the reality of finite consumer resources. Investors started asking uncomfortable questions. Could these high-growth models survive if delinquencies kept climbing? The math was becoming increasingly difficult to justify. Quietly, BNPL providers began tightening their credit requirements, even as their public marketing continued to promise that everyone qualifies. The disconnect between reality and advertising was growing wider by the day. Class action lawsuits emerged, alleging deceptive disclosure practices and financial harm to consumers. The legal challenges were mounting just as fast as the debt. Select economists and Federal Reserve researchers had been sounding early warnings, but their voices had been drowned out by the industry's relentless growth narrative. Now the predictions were becoming reality. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is done watching from the sidelines. In 2024, they gathered enough credit risk data to finally act. The agency is now drafting new rules that could transform how buy now, pay later companies operate. The question dividing Washington is simple but explosive. Should BNPL be regulated like credit cards with strict disclosure requirements, or treated like dangerous short-term loans with caps on fees and interest? The industry isn't sitting quietly. Major BNPL companies have spent millions on lobbying efforts, hoping to water down any new regulations before they take effect. Meanwhile, federal and state lawmakers are pushing their own legislation. They want mandatory disclosure requirements, stricter lending standards, and limits on aggressive collection methods. Enforcement actions are already happening. Late 2024 saw the CFPB take action against several top producers for deceptive practices and inadequate consumer protections. Some companies are trying to get ahead of the crackdown. Afterpay recently announced voluntary transparency measures and stricter internal controls. But consumer advocates question whether this is genuine reform or just clever public relations. Globally, regulators are moving fast. Australia, the United Kingdom, and the European Union are all implementing tighter BNPL oversight. American lawmakers are studying these international approaches for guidance. If strict regulations come to pass, the economic ripple effects could be massive. Retailers who've built their business models around easy payment options might see sales plummet. The entire fintech sector could face a major restructuring. Consumer advocates want more than just regulation. They are pushing for BNPL debt forgiveness programs and mandatory debt dashboards that show users their total payment obligations across all platforms. The industry's response? Artificial intelligence-powered loan underwriting to replace the current blanket approval models that got them into this mess. The central tension remains unchanged: transparency versus profits, growth versus stability. The question that will determine everything is becoming impossible to ignore. If the buy now, pay later bubble finally pops, who pays the bill? Here's what keeps me awake at night. Is the true cost of instant convenience even knowable before the dust settles? We've crossed a line. The boundary between shopping and sensible borrowing has permanently blurred, and most people don't even realize it happened. Every tap, every swipe, every just for payments decision feeds an algorithm designed to know you better than you know yourself. History screams a warning. Every financial innovation arrives with a promise of freedom and leaves behind unforeseen trade-offs. The mortgage crisis, the credit card boom, the subprime meltdown. Yet here we are again, enchanted by the same siren song wrapped in a sleeker package. Awareness is your only shield. Look for the hidden traps in your own digital life. Every click, every promotional offer is a data point in an experiment that's not yet complete. And you're the test subject. Share your thoughts below. Have you ever fallen into the BNPL trap? Your story might save someone else from the same mistake. If you learned something new, hit like and subscribe. Don't let this be another missed payment on valuable knowledge. If business exposés fascinate you, stick around. Our next story dives even deeper into the strange world of money and ambition. I think it's one you might just like.